I'm so happy you made it to your coaching corner session. So I want to teach you today how I learned to disappoint people as someone who identifies as an empath. And I call it the disappointment parachute. I needed to learn about the disappointment parachute because the thought in the past of disappointing people used to actually paralyze me and put me into a state of utter freeze. Maybe for you it's fight, maybe for you it's flee. And look, still to this day, the mere thought of disappointing people can be the garlic to my inner vampire. But in the past, it prevented me from living a life on my terms. The thought of disappointing other people, the mere thought of a conversation where I had to let someone down. So I used to lose sleep over overthinking about disappointing people. I allowed my personal boundaries to be broken regularly, and people didn't even know they were doing it to begin with. I just kept saying yes. I never allowed myself any kind of recovery or rest of my own mind. I stayed in jobs and relationships way too long. And I would sit in guilt, anxiety, fear, darkness for months, weeks, days, all the time. But the worst thing was, because of my fear of disappointing others, I found myself acting out of alignment with my personal values. I found myself not speaking my truth. I found myself in white lies. I found myself not sharing fully and withholding information. And that hurts the most. And that's where I started to what I call sweating through the bed sheets at night. So do any of these symptoms that I had sound familiar to someone you might know in your life, possibly even yourself? So I had to learn about the disappointment parachute. And the disappointment parachute was my way out of a crippling life full of guilt and anxiety as someone who, again, identifies as a highly sensitive person, as someone who identifies with the traits of an empath. Because I care, I do. I like being loved, I loved being liked, and I am not, and I feel okay saying that. But I don't like hurting people emotionally, or physically. So I had to create a way to let people down and limit the amount of damage done to myself and to other people. And that was the disappointment parachute. And so before I share with you a little bit more about the disappointment parachute, I want to share with you first some of the laws about disappointment. Some of the principles of being a human and this D word, disappointment, especially as an empath or a highly sensitive person. Look, let's just call the spade a spade. Disappointing people is part of living a life on your terms. It has to be. It's inevitable because you're living a life on your terms, not somebody else's terms. And I'm not even referring to one specific person in your life that you're not living a life on their terms. Living a life on your terms means there's the opportunities to show up regularly to possibly disappoint people. Disappointment is part of our nature as humans. It's an emotion, and all humans have it. It's not your job to remove disappointment from people. Just as happiness and sadness and fear are emotions that are inevitable, that we will feel as biological creatures roaming planet Earth, disappointment is part of our nature. And so therefore, if disappointment is just an emotion, it's an indicator on our dashboard of life or an indicator on other people's dashboards of, I'm not getting my way. It's just a light, you're not getting your way, you're not getting your way, you're not getting your way. Now, I'm not trying to make light of that because sometimes getting our way is very important to our survival. But when it comes to, wanting to make a certain dinner versus going out for dinner, it's perfectly acceptable. So to want to do what your needs are. So now that we know the laws of disappointing others, we can deploy the parachute. So let me explain it. It's a visual, right? I'm not asking you to get up in an airplane. It's a visual that I use when I'm walking into scenarios where I need to let someone down. Be it a friend who wants to go to dinner and I don't want to go out. Being it's a member of my team that I missed a deadline on and I have to share that I've just made their life a little harder. Or it's telling someone as extreme as in my life as I don't want you in my life anymore. I think this relationship has run its course. I know that sounds harsh, especially if you identify as a sensitive person like me. So here's what I do. In my imagination, in my mind's eye, prior to going in and having what I deem to be a difficult conversation, or a conversation where I have to let somebody down, I want you to imagine putting on a parachute on yourself and putting a parachute on the other person. And imagine telling the person the news that you're about to share, and they start kicking, screaming, hyperventilating, turning red, whatever it is they normally do. Well, what you do is you pull the parachute on theirs, whoof. You pull the parachute cord on yours, whoof, and just imagine you're both falling to the ground gently, and you can see them kicking and screaming, and then you both hit the ground with your parachute on, and you go, it's okay. You're okay. I'm okay. And walking away. That's the visual. Now, in real life, you've already mentally rehearsed this, and so when you're going into the conversation, if the person starts kicking and screaming, you already know you've got the parachute on, and they've got the parachute on. So straighten up your spine and just go, pull their cord, woof, and pull your cord, woof, and you're both going to slowly fall to the ground no matter what their visceral reaction is, and let the conversation play out. It's okay, you're okay, I'm okay. That's what you have in your mind's eye that's being said. And you're just speaking your truth. Most of the time, you're going to even find that the narrative you had in your mind that was going to play out was way far worse than the one that actually occurs. And in the times that it is, then okay, you have a disappointment parachute on. But often the need to even pull the cord never even comes up. Or you can pull it anyways. What's the worst thing? You both have a parachute. Go poof. So imagine what it's going to be like to get back to speaking your truth faster, or get to speaking your truth faster and clearer. And that's what the disappointment parachute allows for me. And it feels so nice. It feels freeing. And it helps me get through the fear of the conversation that I have in my mind and right to the conversation that has to be shared. And by the way, you could do the same thing if someone disappoints you. Someone's disappointing you, put on your parachute, pull your own cord, and then it's okay. I'm okay. You're okay. Float back down to the ground, and that's it, right? So my question for you is, where right now are you withholding truth that is preventing you from living a life on your terms, where it's time to have a conversation where you might need to disappoint someone or share something that might not meet their expectation? And again, that's just the narrative in your mind, but at least you can be prepared mentally with your disappointment parachute. Go into the conversation and allow yourself both to float to the ground. No kittens were ever harmed in the telling of truth. But here's one thing that I want you to remember and keep in mind always. And some of you might have already been thinking it, so I want to preempt it. I want us all to be responsible for those who are in our care. The disappointment parachute is not to be used because, you just don't feel like fulfilling an important promise. It's not a free pass or an escape hatch to avoid uncomfortable conversations. The disappointment parachute is there so you can start microdosing no and saying yes to yourself, which will mean saying no to others. I want you to live a life on your terms. And disappointment is just part of life. If disappointment didn't exist, we wouldn't have skyscrapers, cell phones. We wouldn't have freedoms that many of us have now. So to live a life on your term, welcome to the disappointment parachute. Enjoy it and wear it well. So if you're ready to deploy the disappointment parachute, even if the thought of it scares you, in a place where you're afraid you're going to fall and fall hard, type in the comment section right now, Geronimo! Much love to you all. Let's go live a day filled with a life on your terms.